This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Do you feel addressed by her? I mean, should you? And for what type of companies are you all being creative? I think creating cool products and services is no longer good when the world is on fire because of climate change, because of increasingly divided societies, because of technology undermining our humanity instead of nurturing it. I mean, how much more of the same do you really need? Do we really need the next food delivery app? Do we really need a smarter electronic toothbrush, faster cars, even if they're electric? Is it about unicorns, or are we talking about zebras? So what? You could all say, right? I mean, is there any pragmatic solution to this? Now imagine me holding two different types of potions in my hand. Here's potion A, and it's about revoke, it's about renounce, it's about sacrifice. Yes, stop consuming. Stop the chase for the next big thing, the next better thing, just in the spirit of relentless growth. Difficult to comply, yes. And politicians even tell us, wow, this is impossible to communicate. Nobody will accept. I mean, ask yourself, would you resign from your beautiful Apple product lines, be it a laptop or iPad, phone? What about vacations to Bali? No more? Let it just be Mallorca? No more either? Well, interestingly enough, there seems to exist a paradox in here. I would like to tell you a little bit about it. It's called the Easterline paradox. It was established by Richard Easterline, a professor of economics at the University of Pennsylvania back in the 70s of the last century. Now, he was studying happiness data and economics and made some interesting and striking coverings. He found out that basically, while happiness rises with the revenues or income that is increasing in the private sector, so the more you actually earn, the happier you get, there is a certain point in time that he observed in many different developing countries and developed countries that suddenly that growth in happiness is not happening anymore. We actually earn more, but happiness is stagnating. Actually, it's even worse. In some cases, like the United States today, happiness is on decline despite more wealth in the private sector. Wow, right? And even in countries that are in transition from a socialistic into a capitalistic system, this is being observed. Now, I ask you, why should we then own more if it doesn't make us happier? And we all know it's not so good for the environment. This was potion A. Now comes here potion B, right? The different one. It's about let's innovate even more because damn, there must be a technological solution to the problem, right? And of course you're right, because let's look back 200 years in history of innovation in the making. I mean, life expectancy, for example, has soared in the last 200 years from just under 30 years to almost 80 years. And that's great, right? So we live longer, better than ever before. We endure less hunger than ever before. We have less poverty than ever before. We share more knowledge than ever before. And if you look at democracy, when in 1816 only 1% of humanity was living in a democracy, today we're at way over 50%. Now, at the same time, unfortunately, we built up a huge legacy, a negative legacy, because while the global population was soaring 10 times in its size, we slashed biodiversity on this beautiful planet by half. Furthermore, energy consumption right now is heavily on the rise, and we all know it has fatal effects on our climate. Now, all this because we were so damn successful in innovation and technology. And guess what? Also, Potion B has an explanation to give you here. It's called the Rebound Effect. I would actually also call it a paradox. Why? Because it describes that as through innovation we increase efficiency, it actually does not lead in savings of resources, but in an increase of consumption. As I told you, paradox, crazy, right? But just think about it. Now that we enter into 5G era, where we have more bandwidth, and actually 5G promises to use less energy per data package. The problem is, well, now we consume 24/7 Netflix and other high demand datas. Think about it, right? So actually, we're going to increase energy. The same goes for whoever of you is driving an SUV or a stronger sports car. Despite that engines have become much more fuel efficient, the problem is that we're using bigger cars because now we can afford them. It's not that we go for the small, super efficient cars. We go for the big one. And this is the rebound effect. Ask yourself, who of you has been advertising cars? And who has been putting her or his energy into projects about efficiency? That sounded so cool. But when actually it all was about the rebound effect. The problem is not consumption per se. The problem is consumption with the winner-takes-all mentality, capitalism without accountability. Oh God, I think this demands for a short musical interlude. What's next, Karel, you will ask? Well, we cannot fix the problem with the same processes and methods that created them in the first place, can we? And what if we acknowledge that human centricity is a catalyst that accelerates and amplifies these very critical patterns? What if we deny that human beings are so exceptional? What if we stop speaking and listening only to ourselves? Or as New Zealand's anthropologist Annie Galloway states, let's design for more than human worlds. And I think we literally need to recode innovation. Because when designers center around the user, where do the needs and desires of the other actors in the system go? The lens of the user obscures the view of the ecosystem it affects. This is why I personally took action, and I'm reveling innovation as it stands today. I've uncovered 3 very important steps to do this over time. The first one, of course, is start with oneself. So I started with myself, saying that I need to shift from fixing things, short-term fixings, to caring, inspired by the futurist and speculative designer Anab Jain. And she stated once that when we foreground the idea of care, it inherently embodies the idea of fixing, building, making. All these are necessary to take care of that very particular things that we love, right? Like persons and trees and insects and birds and animals, the us, them, everyone. The second point is to rebel not only yourself, but actually the company you are working at or for. And I think that we need to shift there from planning, from strategizing, into gardening. As well there, I got inspired by a beautiful human being, Deborah Choi, who is a female entrepreneur from Nigeria and founder of the Berlin startup company Horticure. She deals a lot about the relationship between humans and plants. And she gave me 3 really important advices on how to change companies, how to actually rebel against the existence of today, which is, first, look at the origin. It's important. Where are you as a company coming from? What is your climate you're best evolving in? And of course, you need the right orientation. Second part was, she stated that too much of everything or anything is actually no longer good. It's even deadly. So we as companies or in companies need to become way more moderate. Lastly, important is to consider rest as an essential source for growth, not weakness. The third big step or level to rebel innovation is actually to rebel your clients and the projects you're working for or on. And it's actually the essence of recoding innovation, because we have to switch and shift our minds from innovation to resurgence. And there I got inspired by the sound ecologist Matt Mickelson, a person that goes into the woods, into nature, and just quietly listens and records the vanishing sounds of nature. And he described to me that we need to focus less on endless growth and more on cyclical forms of nurturing, of growing, and yes, also dying and renewing. Simply put, think of natural wildfires. What has been destroyed by them is usually the fertile base for the next generation. Going back to Greta, we dared to open the box of Pandora. I think let's recode innovation. Because as we shape next generation businesses and business practices, it would be a mistake not to consider that we are the last generation with the agency to save human mankind from the climate catastrophe. Thank you all for tuning in. Now go on, be a rebel.